Hello, in this video, I will be doing some calculator work with a quadratic function. In this particular problem, we have a given function that's representing the sales of new homes in thousands in the United States, where X is the number of years after 2009. What I'm really focusing on in this video is the calculator portion. But you can go ahead and read through the problem. For part A, they wanted us to estimate the number of new homes in 2012, which means we had to plug in X equals 3. So I'm going to show you how I can do that right on the graphing calculator. So our function here is given as 22.1 times X squared. So I'm just going to go ahead and use parentheses to plug in my X value of 3. Then notice my cursor here is up in the exponent, so I'm going to move it down using the right arrow. And next I have minus. So make sure that you're not confusing the minus and the negative. This button under the 3, that's a negative sign, not a subtraction sign. So I'm doing minus and then 72.2 times 3 and then plus 371.9. And so press enter, and that gives me this answer that I got for part A, which was the number of new homes sold in 2012. And again, that number was in thousands. For part B, they want us to now solve to figure out in what year were the sales of homes, 563.4 thousand. So in this case, we're trying to solve for X. And so we set the equation equal to that number, move it over to standard form, and then from there we can see our A, B, and C values to use in the quadratic formula. This can't be solved by factoring, so we're using the quadratic formula. So we do negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. I'll show you what I did to get to this next step is I simplified just the discriminant, the section that's underneath the radical. So you do want to be careful when you're doing this in the calculator. I like to kind of do it step by step. It also helps maybe like on a test if you're showing your work, just to kind of break it down into smaller parts. So inside the radical, I have that negative 72.2 squared. And then that is minus 4 times 22.1 times negative, and notice here I'm doing that negative button, not minus. So it's negative 191.5. And so again, when I press enter, this number represents the value that I got from just the discriminant. And so you can see that here inside the radical. I'm not rounding anything yet. We want to keep our answers as exact as possible up until the end. And so now I'm going to type in this fraction. And so one way that I'm going to do it is I'm just going to first do the plus. Notice here in my notes, I wrote parentheses around the numerator because when I'm typing it in the calculator, I want the calculator to know that it's the entire expression in the numerator that's being divided by that denominator. So when I type that in, I'm going to do parentheses 72.2. First, I'll do the plus. And then I have the square root of 22141.44. And then I'm going to move my cursor out and close that parentheses. And now that entire expression is being divided by 44.2. So if you notice here on my calculator, I have the entire numerator in parentheses and dividing it. And then I press enter. And that's where I get my first solution, which is 5. But since the quadratic formula represents 2 different solutions, I do want to go ahead and type in the other solution, which is the minus. And so back on my calculator, instead of typing in the whole thing again, I can just go up and highlight that whole problem that I just typed in and press enter. And then I can just move over and change this to subtraction. Remember, we're subtracting now. So in the operations section of your calculator, which are these 4 buttons here, we want to choose subtraction. So I'm going to change that to minus. And then I can just press enter. And that's where I get the second solution, the negative 1.733. Now, typically, we would have two solutions when we're solving a quadratic equation, but in this application, we're looking for a year. We're not going to be going back in time. We're not doing negative calculations. And so that means in this context, our only valid solution is the positive solution. And so since X is the number of years after 2009, that means that the home sales reached this number in 2014. But again, this was to show how to do all that in the calculator. I hope it helps. If you have any questions or anything, you can leave a comment and I will do my best to answer. Thanks so much.